When my son told me I wasn't welcome at his place for Christmas, I just smiled, got in my truck, and made one phone call. By New Year's, I'd already canceled their mortgage payments. And honestly, that was only the start of my plan. Justice had to be served, and their arrogance had to be put in check. You won't believe what I did next. Before we go any further, if my story has found you, hit subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I want to see just how far my words can travel. I could cook my famous turkey this year, I said, sinking deeper into David's leather couch. The one with the sage stuffing your mom used to love. Remember how she always claimed it beat her grandmother's recipe? My words hung in the warm air, mixing with the sweet smell of Lauren's pricey vanilla candles. David shifted next to me, his wedding band catching the light from their 12-foot Christmas tree. His shoulders tightened like he was bracing for bad news. Dad, you're not welcome here for Christmas. The words hit me hard. I blinked, thinking I must have misheard. What do you mean? Why wouldn't I be welcome? He couldn't look at me. His eyes stayed glued to the marble coffee table, the one I'd helped him choose last spring when Lauren decided their old furniture wasn't classy enough. Lauren's parents are coming, and they'd rather you weren't here. My hands went cold. They'd rather. It's just easier this way, Dad. You know how her family is about traditions. They like to do things their own way. His voice got weaker with every word, like he was shrinking inside himself. I looked around the room, at the silk curtains I'd paid for when Lauren wanted more privacy, at the hardwood floors that came from my second mortgage, at the crown molding I'd maxed out a credit card for. Every single corner of this house carried my fingerprints, my sacrifices, my love for my son. Their own way. I repeated slowly. And what exactly is that, David? He flinched. Dad, please, don't make this harder. Through the kitchen archway, I spotted Lauren's shiny KitchenAid mixer, the professional one she just had to have for her holiday baking phase that lasted maybe 3 weeks. $2,000 of my money, now just sitting there collecting dust. And where am I supposed to spend Christmas, then? My voice came out softer than I wanted. David's face crumbled. Maybe you could visit Aunt Linda? Or, we could celebrate the weekend after. The weekend after. Like Christmas was just another meeting you could move around for convenience. I pushed myself up, my knees aching after years of carrying this load alone. I see. Dad, wait. But I was already walking toward the door, past the family photos where my face got smaller and smaller in each frame, past the closet stuffed with Lauren's endless jackets. My hand found the doorknob, cold and heavy under my palm. Son, I said, not turning back. Tell Lauren's parents. I paused. Feliz Navidad. The December air hit me like a slap as I stepped outside toward my truck. Behind me, I heard David call my name once, then the soft click of the door shutting. Final. Absolute. I sat in the driver's seat for a moment, engine off, staring at the Christmas lights glowing in houses where I'd never belong. My phone buzzed, probably David, ready with hollow promises or guilt. I didn't answer. Instead, I turned the key, pulled into the dark, and drove away from the warm glow of the house I had built for them, but was never truly welcome in. The heater hummed against the December chill as I drove through the familiar streets of Maplewood Heights. Every corner carried echoes of the man I used to be, the man who believed family was everything, who'd hand over his last dollar just to see his son smile. That man was a fool. I stopped at the red light on 42nd and Jefferson, watching a young father pack Christmas gifts into his SUV. His kids pressed their faces to the glass, little clouds of breath fogging the windows with excitement. Once upon a time, that had been David and me. Before Lauren. Before I was reduced to nothing more than a walking ATM with inconvenient feelings. Numbers started racing through my head like a busted slot machine. $2,800 every month, for 5 years straight. I'd totaled it all up last spring when my calculator practically gave up. $140,000. More than Sandra and I had managed to save for our entire retirement. Gone. Just gone. The light turned green. I pressed the accelerator harder than I needed to, the truck's growl matching my mood. I passed Oakwood Avenue, where I'd refinanced our house, Sandra's and mine, to cover their down payment. I still remember the loan officer's pitying look. "Mr. Mitchell, are you sure about this? You're risking a lot for someone else's investment. Someone else's investment. Not my son's future. Not my family's security. Someone else's." On Madison Street stood the bank where I'd taken out a second mortgage when David lost his job 2 years ago. "Just temporary, Dad. Just until I get back on my feet." Lauren stood behind him, that $700 purse hanging from her shoulder, nodding with fake sympathy while silently calculating how much my desperation was worth. The truth. It was worth nothing. I pulled into my driveway, the one with the cracked concrete I couldn't afford to fix because every extra dollar went into fueling their perfect suburban fantasy. The porch light flickered, another repair I'd put off. Inside, the house felt hollow, no Sandra's laughter, no warmth of family gatherings that would never return. As I fumbled with my keys, my phone rang, its shrill tone echoing through the empty rooms. Lauren's name flashed on the screen. Perfect timing. Probably calling to explain why I wasn't good enough for her parents' delicate sensibilities. I'd been waiting 5 years for this talk. I let it ring 4 times before picking up, just long enough for her to wonder if I would. "Robert," she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness, the same tone she used whenever she wanted me to cover the water bill or their property taxes. "I heard about the little misunderstanding with David." Misunderstanding. I leaned against the kitchen counter, still in my coat. "I don't think there's any misunderstanding, Lauren. You made yourself pretty clear. Look, I know it seems harsh, but you have to understand my parents' perspective. They're traditional people. They expect a certain atmosphere during the holidays." "A certain atmosphere?" I repeated. "And what kind of atmosphere would that be?" She paused. I heard shopping bags rustling in the background. Spending money that should have gone toward their mortgage. My responsibility, apparently. "Well, they're not used to your kind of cooking. All that spicy Mexican food, and the loud music. And frankly, Robert, they're educated people. They expect conversations about current events, literature, art, you know." Her words landed harder than any punch. 8 years. 8 years of biting my tongue, swallowing insults for David's sake, pretending not to notice the way Lauren looked at me, like I was hired help. "My kind of cooking." My voice stayed calm, steady. "You mean the food you ate every Sunday for 3 years when money was tight? The tamales you said reminded you of your grandmother." "That was different," she said quickly. "We were appreciative then. But now, with my parents." "Now, with your parents," I cut in, "you can't have the Mexican peasant embarrassing you at your fancy dinner table." The fake sweetness in her tone vanished. "Don't be dramatic, Robert. This isn't about race. It's about class. My father graduated summa cum laude from Columbia University. My mother speaks 4 languages. They spend summers on Martha's Vineyard. And what exactly would you bring to the dinner conversation? Stories about laying tile." Heat surged through me, but I kept my voice even. "I built a business from nothing after your husband's grandfather passed. I've given jobs to over 50 people. I've paid more in taxes than your father ever made in his best year. Money isn't everything, Robert. Breeding matters. Education matters. And honestly, Sandra understood her place better than you understand yours." The line went dead silent. She'd crossed it, a line I hadn't even realized existed until she stomped over it in her designer heels. "What did you just say about my wife?" "I'm just saying she blended in better. She didn't make waves. She knew some spaces weren't meant for her." My hand gripped the phone so tight my knuckles turned white. "Sandra had more class in her little finger than your entire bloodline will ever have." "Oh, please. She was a house cleaner who got lucky. At least she knew better than to brag about it." "Lauren." My voice dropped lower than I recognized. "Listen very carefully. This conversation is over. We're done pretending to be family. You can't just. We're done, I repeated and hung up. I set the phone down on the counter, my hands steady in a way that surprised me. Around me, the kitchen felt different, smaller, but lighter, as if a heavy weight had finally lifted. I walked over to my desk in the corner and pulled out the manila folder I'd been avoiding for months. Bank statements, mortgage papers, 5 years of automatic transfers that drained me while they lived like royalty. It was time to stop the bleeding. I spread the documents across the kitchen table like evidence at a crime scene. 5 years of bank statements, each one showing the same number, $2,800 on the 15th of every month, disappearing from my account into theirs. A paper trail of my own stupidity. I grabbed my calculator and started adding. Year 1, 33,600. Year 2, another 33,600. By the third year, I'd stopped buying new clothes. By the fourth, I was shopping at discount grocery stores. By this year, the fifth, I was eating peanut butter sandwiches for lunch just to keep up. $143,400. And that didn't even include the down payment. Or the times I covered their utilities when Lauren's shopping addiction spiraled out of control. Or the new roof, the landscaping, the furniture they had to have to match their lifestyle. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the numbers until they blurred. Sandra's life insurance. My retirement. The college fund we'd started for grandkids I'll probably never be allowed to meet. All of it, gone. All that money poured into a house where I wasn't even welcome for Christmas dinner. I grabbed my phone, scrolled through my contacts, and found the number for the bank. The automated voice gave me the option of English or Spanish. How thoughtful. How accommodating for people like me. Customer service, this is Jennifer, how can I help you today? I need to cancel an automatic transfer, I said, my voice steadier than it had been in years. Certainly, sir. I'll need your account number and some verification information. I rattled off the numbers while she typed in the background. Professional. Efficient. No judgment about why a 62-year-old man was canceling what was clearly his son's mortgage payment. I see the transfer, Mr. Mitchell. $2,800, monthly, to Wells Fargo. Account ending in 7423. How long have you been making this transfer? 5 years. The words tasted bitter. And you'd like to cancel it effective immediately? I glanced around my kitchen, the old appliances I couldn't afford to replace, the walls needing paint, the drafty windows I'd ignored because all my money went into someone else's castle. Effective immediately, I confirmed. Done. The transfer has been cancelled. Is there anything else I can help you with today? No, I paused, surprised at how good that single word felt. No, that's everything. I hung up and sat in the quiet. Outside, December darkness was settling over Denver. Christmas lights sparkled in windows where families gathered without judgment, without conditions, without needing to hide who they were. For the first time in 5 years, next month's budget would balance. For the first time since Sandra died, I could fix the porch light, buy real groceries, maybe even take a trip. I gathered the bank statements, the mortgage papers, every shred of evidence from those years of sacrifice. Then I walked to the fireplace, struck a match, and watched 5 years of martyrdom curl up into ash. The heat touched my face, warmer than I'd felt in years. My phone buzzed. Probably David, ready with apologies, or Lauren, needing money for something essential, like new throw pillows. I didn't check. Instead, I poured myself a glass of the good whiskey, the bottle I'd been saving for some occasion that never came. Tonight felt special enough. I lifted my glass to the empty room, to Sandra's picture on the mantel, to the man I used to be, and the man I was becoming. Merry Christmas to me, I said. And for the first time in a long time, I meant it. The next morning came bright and clear, sunlight streaming through the kitchen window as I sipped my second cup of coffee. For the first time in years, I wasn't calculating how much money would vanish from my account in 3 days. Freedom tasted better than the Colombian roast I'd finally let myself buy. At exactly 10:47 a.m., My phone rang. Lauren's name lit up the screen like a warning label. "Robert," she said, her voice sharp with impatience. "I need you to pick up my parents from Denver Airport. Their flight from Seattle lands at 2 o'clock. I set my mug down slowly, watching the steam curl. "Lauren, did you forget our conversation yesterday? Look, whatever that was about, we need to focus on practical matters. My parents need transportation, and you're the only one available during the day." The audacity took my breath away. Less than 24 hours after telling me I wasn't worthy of Christmas dinner, she expected me to be her family's chauffeur. "And you're asking me because..." "Because that's what family does, Robert. They help each other." Her voice snapped with irritation. "And let's be real. You're not my rival. You're too weak to be my rival. So just get in your truck and pick them up." There it was. The final insult, wrapped up as a command. "What airline?" I asked quietly. "Alaska Air, Flight 447. Baggage claim, Carousel 3. And Robert, they're expecting someone who can handle their luggage properly. Don't embarrass us." I could hear her nails tapping against her granite countertop, the one I'd paid for when she decided laminate wasn't classy enough for her parties. "Of course," I said smoothly. "I'll take care of everything." "Good. And wear something decent. Maybe that blue shirt you wore to David's graduation. They notice things like that." The line went dead. "No thank you. Nothing." I leaned back in my chair, staring at the blank screen of my phone. 2 o'clock. Flight 447. Carousel 3. I looked at the clock above the sink. 10:52 a.m. Plenty of time. I poured another cup of coffee, added an extra spoonful of sugar, and unfolded yesterday's newspaper to the crossword I hadn't finished. 7 across. Delayed gratification. 12 letters. The answer would come eventually. Part 6. The Airport Trap. At 2:15 p.m., I was sinking into my favorite armchair with a fresh cup of Earl Grey and the Sunday edition of the Denver Post. Yesterday's crossword was already finished. Delayed gratification had turned out to be postponement. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. Lauren again. I let it ring. The December sunlight poured through my living room windows, warming the space where I'd spent so many lonely evenings counting the cost of my generosity. But today, the quiet felt different. Intentional. Earned. By 2:47, the phone buzzed again. This time, I saw the preview of her text. "Dad, where are you?" "My parents are." I turned the phone face down and kept reading the sports section. The Broncos had lost again. Some things never changed. By 3:30, my phone had rung 6 times. I'd already finished the paper, brewed another pot of tea, and started cleaning out the junk drawer in my kitchen table. Funny how much you can get done when you're not running around like someone else's unpaid chauffeur. The 7th call came at 3:45. Not Lauren's number this time, probably her parents borrowing a stranger's phone at the airport. I let it ring, too. Outside, my neighbor was stringing Christmas lights on his porch. His kids ran across the yard, laughing the kind of laughter only December afternoons seem to carry. Normal families, doing normal things. No one stranded, no one waiting for someone who'd never show up. By 4:15, the calls became constant. Lauren, then the unknown number, then Lauren again. The buzzing sounded like a trapped wasp against glass. I walked into the kitchen, unplugged the landline, and shut off my cell completely. Silence. Perfect silence. I made myself a grilled cheese sandwich and heated a can of tomato soup, comfort food I hadn't allowed myself in years because every grocery dollar had gone into keeping their lifestyle afloat. The cheese melted golden, the soup steamed in my favorite mug. Across the backyard, the sun was already slipping low, shadows stretching long across the frozen ground. Somewhere across Denver, 3 very angry people were probably standing in a parking garage, arguing over taxi fare, wondering how their loyal servant had the nerve to strand them. The thought made my soup taste even better. By 5 p.m., I'd eaten, loaded the dishwasher, and started debating which movie to watch. It had been years since I'd had an evening to myself. No emergencies, no last-minute demands. I was reaching for the remote when the pounding started. Not knocking. Pounding. The kind of violent hammering that rattled the frame and carried nothing but fury. I set my tea down and walked slowly to the door. I already knew exactly who it was. The pounding grew louder with every step, each blow shaking the wood. Through the peephole, I saw 3 figures crammed onto my porch like wolves at the edge of the hunt. I opened the door to find Richard Walker's red face inches from mine. "What the hell is wrong with you?" he barked, shoving his way inside without so much as a hello. "We waited at that damn airport for over 3 hours." Margaret followed, hair frazzled, lips pressed into a thin, furious line. "This is absolutely unacceptable, Robert. Completely barbaric behavior from someone your age." Lauren trailed behind, her designer coat wrinkled, makeup streaked. "You humiliated us. Do you even understand what you've done? My parents had to take a $40 taxi because you decided. Get out of my house." The words cut through their shouting like a blade. The room fell quiet, their rage stunned into silence by the steel in my tone. "Excuse me." Richard's face flushed deeper, edging into purple. "You don't get to bark orders after what you pulled." "This is my house," I said evenly, holding my ground by the door. "And I want you out. Now." Margaret stepped forward, her voice dripping with condescension, the kind that comes from decades of looking down on people like me. "Robert, you clearly don't understand the magnitude of your mistake. My husband has connections all over this city. Business connections, social connections. You can't treat people like us this way and expect." "This was a lesson," I interrupted, locking eyes with her. "A lesson about arrogance. About the way you treat people you think are beneath you." Lauren's jaw dropped. "A lesson? Who do you think you are? You're nobody. I'm someone who finally stopped being your personal bank account. Your taxi driver. Your servant." I stepped aside, swinging the door open wider. "The lesson's over. Get out." Richard jabbed a finger at my chest, though he didn't dare touch me. "You have no idea who you're messing with, old man. I've been in this city longer than you've been breathing its air. I know people. Important people. People who can make your life very, very difficult." "Is that a threat, Mr. Walker?" "It's a promise," he growled, voice dropping to a low, dangerous whisper. "You think abandoning elderly people at an airport has no consequences? You're about to find out how wrong you are." Margaret nodded beside him, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. "Indeed. Actions have consequences, Robert. And yours will be very public." Lauren clutched her father's arm. "Daddy, let's just go. This pathetic old man isn't worth it." They left my house like a defeated army, but Richard paused at the door. "You'll regret this," he promised, his voice low and ugly. "I guarantee it." I shut the door behind them and turned the deadbolt with a sharp click. Through the window, I watched them pile into their rental car, still arguing as they disappeared into the December night. The air in my house felt cleaner without them, as if their presence had left a stain that finally lifted. But their words echoed in the silence. Public consequences, important people, connections. I walked back to the living room, picked up my tea, and sipped. For the first time in this whole mess, I felt something close to concern. But stronger than that. Anticipation. 3 days later, I was drinking my morning coffee and flipping through the Denver Gazette when I nearly choked. Page 3. My own face stared back at me, an old photo pulled from my company's website. The headline read, "Denver businessman abandons elderly couple at airport during holiday storm." I froze, coffee mug halfway to my lips. Below the picture was a story that made my blood boil. Richard and Margaret Walker, visiting their daughter for Christmas, had been stranded at Denver International Airport for 4 hours when family member Robert Mitchell failed to pick them up for a prearranged ride. A winter storm warning was in effect, the article claimed. "We couldn't believe someone would just abandon us like that," Richard said, painting himself as a helpless victim. At our age, this isn't just inconsiderate, it's dangerous. Dangerous. There hadn't been a storm. It was 52 degrees and sunny. The piece went on, full of quotes about my erratic behavior and unstable mental state. No mention of the Christmas dinner rejection. No mention of Lauren's demands. No mention of the years I'd spent bleeding money to keep them afloat. Just me, the villain who left two poor, defenseless tourists in a blizzard that only existed in Richard's imagination. I set my coffee down and read it again. Then a third time. The byline, Elaine Turner, lifestyle editor. A name I didn't know. But I knew the game. Richard had called in favors, leaned on his banking connections, and made sure this story landed right where it would hurt me the most. It was smart. Very smart. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a flicker of respect. They weren't just spoiled brats throwing tantrums. They were deliberate. Strategic. They understood that in a city like Denver, reputation was everything. One well-placed article could erase 40 years of work. They hadn't just pushed me. They'd declared war. I folded the paper neatly, set it aside, and felt my mind shift into the same methodical gear that had built my business from nothing. This wasn't about an airport pickup anymore. Or a holiday dinner. Or mortgage payments. This was about winning. I opened my laptop and started digging. Richard Walker. Margaret Walker. Lauren Mitchell. Their social media profiles, their connections, their habits, their weaknesses, everything they'd carelessly left exposed to the world. If they wanted a chess match, I'd show them what a real strategist looked like. The wall calendar hung above my desk. December 18th. 7 days until Christmas. 7 days to plan something they'd never forget. For the next 3 days, I lived in a different world. Not the one where I was Robert Mitchell, the old man walked over by his own family. But the one where I was Robert Mitchell, businessman. A strategist. Someone who had built something real and wasn't about to let parasites tear it down. My laptop became command central. Tabs filled my screen like playing cards in a high-stakes game. Richard Walker, retired First National Bank manager, member of the Denver Country Club, treasurer of the Mountain West Business Leaders Association. A man with a polished reputation, and plenty to lose. Margaret's Instagram told its own story. Charity luncheons, wine tastings, vacation snapshots at Lake Tahoe, every post wrapped in hashtags about her blessed life. Carefully curated, designed to project elegance and success. Friends leaving comments like "You're such an inspiration." Not one of them realizing it was all built on other people's money. Mine included. And then there was Lauren. Her Facebook timeline told the real story. Posts about our beautiful home, with photos of the kitchen I'd paid for. Check-ins at expensive restaurants during the very months I was covering their utility bills. A status update from last week. So excited for Christmas dinner with family. Can't wait to show off our hosting skills. Our hosting skills. Our home. Our success. The narcissism was breathtaking. But it was David's LinkedIn that handed me the last puzzle piece. His recent activity showed a new connection. Elaine Turner, lifestyle editor at the Denver Gazette. The same Elaine Turner who'd written that hit piece about me. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the evidence glowing across my screen. They had made 3 critical mistakes. First, they had underestimated me completely. Second, they'd taken their attack public, which meant I could do the same. And third, they'd documented every ounce of their privileged lifestyle online, handing me a catalog of their hypocrisy. I pulled up Elaine's profile. 43 years old. Journalism degree from the University of Colorado. 15 years in local news. No ties to banking or finance. Which meant Richard hadn't gone to a friend, he'd gone cold, probably through a mutual connection. A quick search confirmed it. 3 overlapping contacts between Richard and her editor. The article hadn't just happened. It had been planted, carefully. Amateur hour. I opened a new document and started typing. Not a rebuttal. Something far more effective, a timeline. 5 years of financial support. Documented. Bank statements, receipts, cancelled checks. The down payment for their house, $47,000 from my home equity loan. The kitchen renovation when Lauren decided granite countertops were essential, $18,000 on my credit card. 60 mortgage payments at $2,800 each, totaling $168,000. Altogether, $250,000. More than I'd spent on myself in the last 10 years. My phone buzzed, a text from a number I didn't know. Probably Lauren, trying some new tactic. I ignored it. By evening, I had everything sorted into a manila folder thick enough to choke a horse. Statements, receipts, screenshots of their bragging social media posts. A copy of the article with my notes scribbled in red ink. Lies circled. Facts highlighted. I looked at my calendar. December 24th was circled in red. Not because it was Christmas, but because it was the perfect day for justice. According to Lauren's Facebook, they were hosting Christmas dinner for 12 guests. Family, friends, neighbors, people who read the Denver Gazette and loved to gossip. The people who deserved to know the truth. I grabbed my good camera, the one I used years ago to document job sites. Time to put it to work on something different. Tomorrow was Christmas Eve, and the Walkers were about to learn what happens when you declare war on someone who actually knows how to fight. Christmas Eve morning broke gray and cold. The kind of Denver winter day that made you grateful for a warm house and family around the table. Too bad I wasn't welcome at either. But I had other plans. I laid out my evidence like a lawyer preparing for trial. Bank statements, each year highlighted. Receipts lined up in order. Photos printed from their social media. Lauren's new jewelry, their vacations, the fancy Christmas decorations filling their home. Every set copied 12 times. One for each guest. On top, the newspaper article with my red notes. Lies crawled next to Richard's claim about a dangerous storm. False next to their talk of my erratic behavior, with bold arrows pointing to 5 years of financial records they'd left out. I dressed carefully in my best navy suit, the same one I'd worn to Sandra's funeral. Pressed and sharp. Tonight wasn't about mourning. It was about saying goodbye to the man who'd let his family walk all over him. At 6:30 p.m., I slid the packets into my briefcase and drove to Cherry Creek. Their house glowed like a postcard, cars jammed in the driveway, spilling into the street. Through the windows I could see silhouettes moving around the dining room. Lauren bustling, playing hostess, in the house my money had built. I parked across the street, checked my watch. 6:45. Perfect. Dinner would be in full swing, no easy escape for anyone. The front door was unlocked. Of course it was. Lauren always loved bragging about how safe their neighborhood was, how they never needed locks. I stepped inside, warmth and laughter hitting me like a wave. Voices floated from the dining room. Then I heard Margaret's voice, smug and sharp. But darling, that's not how we do things in our family. Followed by laughter. Our family. That's what they called themselves after everything they'd done to shut me out of it. I walked into the dining room with my briefcase in hand. 12 faces turned toward me. Shock, horror, confusion. Lauren froze mid-sip, her wine glass trembling. David's face went pale. Richard and Margaret Walker looked like they'd just seen a ghost. "Good evening, everyone," I said calmly, setting my briefcase on their polished marble sideboard. "I hope you don't mind me joining your Christmas celebration." Lauren's voice snapped first. "Robert, this is completely inappropriate. You need to leave. Now." "Actually," I said, flipping open my briefcase and pulling out the first stack of papers, "I think your guests deserve to know who really paid for this dinner, for this house, and for the lifestyle you've all been admiring." A woman I didn't recognize, probably one of Margaret's charity friends, leaned forward, curiosity written on her face. "What is he talking about, Lauren?" "He's having some kind of episode," Lauren said quickly. "David, call someone." But I was already circling the table, placing a packet in front of each guest. "Here are the bank records," I said conversationally. 5 years of financial support. $168,000 in mortgage payments alone. Add the down payment, the renovations, the furniture, the appliances, everything you see around you. The room fell into silence, broken only by the soft shuffle of papers as 12 sets of hands flipped through the evidence. I watched their expressions shift, surprise giving way to disbelief, disbelief to outrage. "This is," one man began, then stopped, staring at the numbers. "Outrageous," finished the woman across from him. She turned sharply to Lauren. "Why didn't you tell us about this?" Lauren's perfect hostess mask was cracking. "It's more complicated than it looks." Robert offered to help. "We never asked." "Actually," I interrupted, laying down copies of the Denver Gazette article, "let's talk about what you did ask for, and what you told the media about me." The air in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Guests glanced from the story to my face, recognizing the photo from that ugly piece just 3 days earlier. "Now," I said, my voice steady, cutting through the hush, "let's talk about the real manipulators here." Richard's complexion drained from crimson to ashen. Margaret sat frozen, her wine glass untouched. "Mr. Walker here," I continued, tapping the paper, "used his banking connections to plant this story. Look at how I'm painted: unstable, dangerous, abandoning poor, helpless seniors in freezing weather." A gray-haired man in an expensive sweater looked up from the article. "Richard, what is this?" "The weather was beautiful that day. 52 and sunny," I confirmed before Richard could stammer out a word. "And they weren't tourists. They were Lauren's parents, on their way to this very dinner I was banned from." "Why?" "Because I wasn't good enough for their company." Margaret finally sputtered. "That's not, we never said." "You never said what, Margaret?" I pulled out my phone and tapped the screen, showing screenshots of Lauren's own posts. "That I was too low-class for your crowd? That my Mexican food and working man stories would embarrass you in front of your educated friends?" The charity woman shifted uncomfortably. "Margaret, surely you didn't." "He's twisting everything," Richard blustered, but his voice had lost its bite. "This man has serious issues. Age, stress, finances." "Finances?" I almost laughed. "I've been paying nearly $3,000 a month for 5 years to support your daughter and her husband. The only financial problems in this room are the ones you're about to have." I turned to the entire table. "These people have taken over $200,000 from me. Behind my back, they mocked me. They poisoned my son against me. They banned me from family gatherings. And when I finally stood up for myself, they tried to destroy my reputation in the press." David finally spoke, his voice small. "Dad, I didn't know about the newspaper." "Your wife knew," I said quietly. "And her parents orchestrated it. They turned me into the villain because I refused to be their ATM. Their driver. Their servant." The mood in the room was shifting like tectonic plates. I saw it in the eyes of the guests. The dawning realization that everything they'd been told about this generous family was a lie. "This is unconscionable," said an elderly woman in pearls, glaring at the Walkers. "Richard, how could you let your daughter bleed this man dry and then attack him when he finally said enough?" Richard's carefully built facade crumbled. "You don't understand the full picture." "I understand perfectly," she cut in. "This man supported your family while you treated him like garbage. And when he stopped, you tried to ruin him." Margaret's voice cracked. "He abandoned us at the airport. After you told me I wasn't welcome at Christmas dinner because my presence would be inappropriate for your parents," I said evenly. The room went dead quiet. "After 5 years of paying your bills while you looked down on me for my ethnicity and education." The silence was crushing. 12 guests sat frozen, their eyes darting between Richard and Margaret, faces tight with disgust or shame for ever associating with them. Lauren made one last desperate attempt to spin it. "Everyone," Please. This is just a family matter that got out of hand. No, I said firmly. This stopped being a family matter the moment you dragged it into the newspaper. The moment you decided my reputation was disposable, collateral damage for your pride. I let my gaze sweep the table, people I didn't even know, who now knew exactly who I was. I wanted you all to hear the truth before you read about Robert Mitchell in the paper again. And you will read about me again. But next time, it'll be the real story. I closed my briefcase, straightened my tie. Enjoy the rest of your dinner. It's the last one I'll ever pay for. As I walked out, the eruption began behind me, raised voices, accusations, questions flying. The sound of a carefully crafted facade crumbling into pieces. It was the most beautiful Christmas music I had ever heard. The letter came on a Tuesday morning in March, delivered by certified mail. Heavy with legal consequence. I signed for it at the door, the spring air carrying the smell of new growth instead of the cold desperation of December. Notice of default. Final demand for payment. Inside, 3 months of missed mortgage payments. David and Lauren had fallen behind. $8,400 past due. 14 days to catch up, or face foreclosure on the house I had once helped them buy. I set the letter aside and went back to my coffee, reading it the way you read about bad weather in some other city. Interesting, but not my problem anymore. The phone had been ringing for weeks. Lauren's number, blocked after the first frantic voicemail. Richard and Margaret, whose social standing in Denver had evaporated like fog after their Christmas humiliation. Even David had tried. I ignored them all, curious how long it would take him to choke down his pride. The answer, 97 days. That Thursday evening, he knocked on my door. Not the confident man who had once barred me from Christmas dinner, but someone who looked like he'd aged 10 years in 3 months. His suit was wrinkled, dark circles bruised his eyes, and the stink of desperation clung to him like bad cologne. "Dad," he said softly when I opened the door. "We need to talk." I stepped aside and let him in. He looked around my house like he was seeing it for the first time. The new furniture I'd bought with my first mortgage-free paycheck, the fresh paint on walls I'd ignored for 8 years while funding his lifestyle, the repairs I could finally afford once I stopped subsidizing someone else's American dream. "Nice place," he muttered. "It's what happens when you spend money on yourself instead of people who don't appreciate it." "Fair enough," he said quietly, lowering himself onto the couch like he wasn't sure he deserved to sit. "Coffee?" I asked, settling into my recliner. He shook his head. His voice cracked. "Dad, I need you to know how sorry I am. About Christmas dinner. The newspaper. The way Lauren. The way we treated you. Go on." I didn't know about Richard planting that story. I swear I didn't. When I found out, he raked his hands through his hair. "Jesus, Dad. The things they said about you. About our family. About Mom's memory." At the mention of Sandra, my jaw tightened, but I kept my voice steady. "And what exactly did they say about your mother?" His eyes dropped. That she knew her place better than you. That she understood boundaries. He couldn't look at me. "I should have defended you," he whispered. "I should have stood up to them years ago." "Yes," I said simply. "You should have." We sat in silence for a long while. Outside, I heard the neighbor mowing his lawn. Just an ordinary Thursday in an ordinary neighborhood, the kind where sons don't banish their fathers from Christmas dinner. "The house is in foreclosure," David said finally. "I know. We can't make the payments without," he trailed off, realizing what he was about to say. "Without my help," I finished for him. "Without the money I sent every month while your wife's family treated me like dirt." He swallowed. "I know how it looks, Dad." I leaned forward until he met my eyes. "Do you know how much I gave you in those 5 years?" He nodded miserably. "Lauren added it up after Christmas. The mortgage payments, the down payment, everything. Over $200,000. $237,468, I corrected. I know the exact number. Because I finally did what I should have done years ago. I added it all up. His face crumpled. Dad, I'm so sorry. I don't know how to fix this. You can't fix it, son. The money's gone. But worse than that, the years are gone. 5 years I should have spent building a relationship with you, instead of funding your wife's fantasy life. I know. I know that now. David looked up at me with something like hope. But maybe we could start over. Maybe there's a way to. Are you asking me to start paying your mortgage again? I asked. The hope drained from his eyes. We're going to lose everything, Dad. The house. Lauren's respect. Her parents' approval. I don't know what I'll do. You'll figure it out, I said, not unkindly. The same way I figured out how to live without a son who respected me. The same way I learned to spend Christmas alone while you sat with people who thought I was beneath them. He broke then, quietly, like a man who had run out of other choices. I lost you, didn't I? I chose them over you, and now I've lost you forever. I studied him for a long moment, this man I had raised, sacrificed for, loved, who had let his wife's family convince him his father wasn't worth their table. David, I said finally, you didn't lose me. You gave me away. There's a difference. His eyes filled. Is there any chance, any way you could forgive me? I forgave you months ago, I said, and I meant it. But forgiveness doesn't mean going back to the way things were. It doesn't mean pretending this never happened, or that I'll keep paying for a lifestyle where I was expected to beg for scraps of your attention. Then what does it mean? I stood and walked to the mantel, where Sandra's photo sat beside a new one. Me at Easter dinner with Linda and her family, the first holiday I'd spent with people who actually wanted me there. It means that if you want a relationship with me, you'll have to build it from scratch. It means showing me respect instead of demanding I earn it. It means choosing what's right, not just what's convenient. I turned back to him. And it means that the next time someone, your wife, her parents, anyone, tries to cut me out of family gatherings, you'll remember who actually acts like family. He nodded slowly, maybe realizing for the first time that respect isn't automatic. It has to be given. The house? He asked softly. Not my problem anymore. I sank back into my recliner, feeling lighter than I had in years. You're a grown man, David. Figure it out like grown men do. Get a job that covers your bills. Sell the house and buy one you can afford. Stop living beyond your means and expecting someone else to bail you out. He stood, his shoulders straighter than when he'd arrived. You're right. About all of it. I know. He reached the door, then turned back. Dad, for what it's worth, seeing you stand up for yourself at Christmas dinner? I was proud. Embarrassed, angry, sure. But proud too. Good, I said. Maybe there's hope for you yet. After he left, I poured myself a glass of good whiskey and stepped onto the porch. Spring was finally reaching Denver. The trees budding. The air warmer, full of promise. In 4 months, I'd turned 63. Sandra had been gone 8 years. I'd wasted 5 of those years being a doormat for people who never valued my sacrifice. I wasn't about to waste another. My phone buzzed. A text from Linda. Dinner Sunday. The kids want to show you their school projects. I smiled and typed back, wouldn't miss it. Real family, I realized, isn't about bloodlines or last names. It's about the people who actually want you at the table. Everything else? Just expensive theater. And I was done buying tickets to shows where I wasn't welcome on stage. The whiskey burned warm and sweet. Freedom tasted better than I ever imagined. And the future looked exactly as bright as I was willing to make it. And if my story stayed with you, tap that like button and subscribe. It lets me know you're here, and it helps this story reach the people who might need it most.